Today and yesterday we're working in a cemetery. It's kind of a interesting job because we're dealing with some completely dead trees. I guess that's an appropriate place for dead trees to be, but these are Douglas firs, and we are having a serious problem with the Douglas fir. I'd like to start off by talking a little bit about the Douglas fir. This is the principal lumber tree that we have on the west coast of California, probably over the entire west coast of the United States. I know it's shipped all over the world, but this is one of the primary big trees that we have in the forest that are logged for building houses. And unfortunately, there's a disease as well as the fir beetle that are attacking these trees. Much like many of the species of trees that are declining, the Douglas fir is in big trouble. If you look at this one, you can see the pitch oozing from the trunk, and if you look up, you can see that it is completely and totally dead. There are 6 Douglas fir in this line, and 4 of them are completely dead. The other 2 are in different stages of decline, but they're all going to go. This job calls for removing 3 of them. They should have done the 4th one, but they didn't get a permit on that one yet. So that'll be another job in the back pocket, I presume. See all the pitch oozing from the trunk of this one. This tree is still a little bit green, but it's not long for this earth. And then just beyond it is yet another completely dead one. And beyond that is one that's still green, but they're all on their way out. Now this is a tough job because of the location. It's outside of the fence of the cemetery and adjacent to a sidewalk as well as a road. It's a very narrow road, and I can't park my truck and chipper down there without blocking things off. So we opted to use the bucket truck from the cemetery. Only problem is it's a bit of a toss for each of these branches as well as the wood to get them back into the cemetery. Now this is Bowman Road. It comes down out of the mountains, and that car was going a reasonable speed. But all day long we had people flying down the road as well as pedestrians and bicycles coming through. So there was a lot of potential hazards. So the job's going pretty smooth. You know, the wood is not extremely heavy as it dries out, but each of these pieces weighed, the top, those are a couple 100 pounds, and then as they got further down they started reaching weights of 500 to 600 pounds. So we ended up roping everything down. We started out with a small rope, and we're just roping off of a tree. We could have used the porter wrap on this, but you know, we're just working off another dead tree, and I like being able to just use the friction on the bark. I understand it really well. So we all traded off different jobs. Kalen started with the removal of the first tree and got it all brushed out. One thing I like to do with my videos is play with different camera angles. So this is a longer video, and you're going to see that I'm setting the camera up in different spots. I'm setting it on the ground. I'm kind of playing with it, trying to get different types of action shots. I have a lot of fun in thinking about the production of the video that I'm going to be doing for the day. Of course, my mind is completely on the job, but there's a lot of periods where you can stop and think about something else. Sometimes tree work is a little monotonous. You know, you're doing the same thing all day long. It's fun, but you know, I like to think about the video productions and what kind of different effects I can do that'll make them a little bit more interesting. I get the drone out sometimes. I get my Steadicam out sometimes. Sometimes, most of the time, I just am freehanding it with the camera because I'm just catching things as they go. Communication, very, very important here. They're starting to get a little bit heavier. You can tell by the jerk, not me, but the jerk on the rope that was pulled there. And so the more wraps you put around a tree or around a porter wrap or lowering device, the better control that you have. But you've also got a problem if you overwrap it because a lot of times you want things to fly. So I put a wrap further around the tree because of the last one that kind of jerked me over a little bit. And we've got these hooked up to a ring that is a very strong ring. We're not using carabiners or anything like that. We have a support that we have tied through, but it's still going to take a drop. Every piece that Kaylin's cutting up here takes a 4 or 5 foot drop as the slack of the rope comes out. And ideally, you want to let it run a little bit. You don't want to just jolt it. But with big wood like that, it's kind of hard to guess how many wraps you need and how to let it go. See, I let it slide down a little bit as it went, and that took the pressure off of the tree. I wasn't worried about the tree. Fungus. You can see all these little fungus mushrooms that are growing on the trunk of the tree. That's an indicator of how long it's been dead. One thing I'm not talking about too much is when you're working with dead trees, you've got an entirely different type of fiber that you're dealing with. It doesn't bend over as readily as living tissue. It cracks easier. If you use spurs on a dead tree, the bark often will peel off on your spurs. Plus, you don't know how long that tree has been dead, so the roots may be weak. Dead trees always fall down. Some species will last longer as a dead tree. Other species, like the tan oak, they're on the ground within a year, maybe 2 at the most. These fir trees have been sitting there dead for well over a year. And I'm getting a little nervous about how to deal with them. I would not have enjoyed climbing these trees. I would have not felt comfortable. Using the bucket, it sped the job up, but it also made it reasonably safe. There you can see the slide of the rope. There was very, very little jerk on the tree, so as it went over it, we let it run a little bit and then slow it down rapidly. Each of these pieces he's cutting now is, there's still a lot of, believe it or not, there's still a lot of moisture in these logs, so they are still pretty heavy. The top wasn't too bad, but as we got down the trunk, they were 400 or 500 pounds apiece. So you've got to remember to keep them supported on the rope while you're working so that you can manage them into good spots. Unfortunately, we had a lot of plants directly underneath us, and we couldn't drop them on the asphalt sidewalk. We would have tore that up. And then just beyond that was a fence, and to our left was a drop-off down into a road. So everything had to be managed. We didn't want to free throw much at all. The branches were light, so we could handle those and throw them over the fence. And in some cases, we were holding on to them and using the bucket to back over the fence, and then drop them straight down. So there's a lot of thinking that's going on how we process this tree, and everybody's on the same page there. Oops, chain came off.
Well, it was too loose to start.
Well, making good time here. First one down to about 16 feet or so. We're going to chunk that one down. And on to number 2, it's 10:15 in the morning. So hard to have on.
As I said, we're working in a cemetery, and I had to go use the restroom, and walking through the cemetery, I saw a lot of really interesting tombstones. There's a story behind everything. That's Thomas Kincaid, the artist. I was kind of surprised. I didn't even know he had died. Didn't live that long. But I don't know, there's a story in every single tombstone and a life in every bit of what's buried out there. And it's kind of eerie in a way to be working in a cemetery, because not only are you dealing with the trees and their life. I've got him counting the rings here. He counted, well, he's going to tell you.
55? How many? 55. 55 years? That's it?
I went back and I counted 71 rings. So a lot of those rings were really, really tight. I may be overcounting, he may be undercounting, but I'm guessing these trees are about 65, 70 years old. Kind of the same as the average lifespan of the people that are buried in the cemetery. So the cemetery is also an arboretum. So they've screwed these little name tags to all the trees, which I think is a little odd, actually, to put in these screws. A lot of interesting trees. That's a Metasequoia glyptostroboides. Say that fast 3 times. That's the dawn redwood. Very interesting tree. It looks like a redwood, but it's deciduous. It loses all of its leaves. I think I've got a video on that particular tree. So I kept walking through the cemetery and had a good time looking at some of the other things. And I noticed that the screws have a washer and a spring. So somebody had the idea that as the trees grow, they don't want them to absorb the name tags, and they thought the spring would be a good idea. But many of these trees are growing so fast that they've already absorbed the washer. The spring is intact, and in some cases they're being bent over. Well, this was kind of sad. This is a woman that I used to know. I coached her daughter in soccer years and years ago, and she passed away, and seeing her picture is kind of eerie. So it's my time to get up in the tree. Jorge went to the dump with a load of wood, and I decided to brush out tree number 3. We needed 4 people. There he is coming back from the dump. We needed 3 people to manage the ropes. One person to hold the rope, the other person to manage the wood. So when we got to some of the tops and some of the wood cuts, we wanted to wait till he got back. So I always enjoy getting up in the bucket truck. I like just getting up as high as I can possibly go. So I did as much as I could there for a while. Back on the ground. I got this new employee here, and he works really, really fast. If I could find somebody that worked like this, boy, look at this guy. Boy, he's amazing. Just, couldn't slow him down. All right, I sped it up. That's me. You see, we had to put all the wood over the fence. One way or another, had to get it all back over there. So back to working with the 3 of us. I was trying to get some shots with Kalen behind the sun there, because sometimes the sawdust going in the sky that glistens in the sun makes for some pretty interesting shots. And as you can see, they're getting rained on pretty good. Thankfully, I've got my face mask on, so I'm not getting any of this stuff in my eyes. There you can tell how heavy that piece is. You can almost feel it coming down. I actually climbed up on the bucket truck, so I wasn't helping him out on this shot. I should have been, but oh well. No, I just took that one shot from over the other side of the fence. Now I've got back to work. A lot of times we're just waiting, When he's making a cut, you can't get underneath him, you can't do anything else, so it gives me opportunities to play with my camera. He was taking lots of wedge pieces and tossing the wedges back over the fence. The less we drop on the street side, the easier the cleanup will be on that side. If we can keep it confined to as much as possible near the truck and chipper. Knots are interesting. Kalen and Jorge both like tying bowlines. I prefer a clove hitch. They're both strong knots. They both work really fine, and I see so many different ways of tying these pieces of wood up. My preference for the clove hitch is that is a knot that actually cinches tighter as more weight gets put on it. The bowline that he's got here is basically a loop around the tree, and the bowline is a knot that is relatively easy to untie. The clove hitch also is an easy knot to untie. If you tie your knots wrong and you tie a square knot or something that cinches up, you can't get these things undone. The amount of force that gets put on the rope when you drop these big timbers on them, or these chunks, will cinch up a knot so tight that it just messes with you. And if you use carabiners or something on a loop, you're putting an awful lot of force on an aluminum ring there. I've seen carabiners snap from people doing this. Carabiners are not bad if you're just doing small, light branches and you just want to be real quick about it. There's so many different ways. You look at every single tree service out there, and everybody does things differently. Everybody, adapts their own ways. Some of them are safer than others. Some of them are more dangerous than others. Some of them are just downright reckless. But we've kind of adapted our way of doing things, and we're always open to change. The rings that we purchased this year, everybody in the crew absolutely loves them. So if you've not used rings with those orange ropes that have different loops in them, make it very, very quick and easy to attach it. And you don't have to tie a knot. You just thread the ring through. You have to thread the rope through the ring every time, but it's pretty fast. There you can see the ring a little bit better. But we're all sold. That's something new to us, so we really, really enjoy it. There, I'm setting the camera up on the fence, trying to get action shots. A walking head. Didn't center that very good, but then I wouldn't have got Kaylin up in the tree. All of this is from day number 1. I'm going back today to finish chunking these things down and working on the remains of tree number 3. We've got tree number 3 just about completely brushed out, but it's a little bit taller and a little bit fatter, so I'm afraid we may have to put on the spurs to finish that one off. We'll see. On tree number 2, the one he's working on right there, Kalen took a really big top cut. He took 25 feet of the top in one piece. And I thought, this will be a great shot, so I went and set up the camera on the fence and hit the record button, walked away, and it went for about 10 minutes or so. I went back to check, and it turned out I hit the time-lapse feature, and it wasn't something I could transfer to my editing program. It wouldn't recognize it, so what could have been the best shot, I missed it. It looked cool. The time-lapse looked really cool. All those clouds up there that looked dead still, it was amazing how fast they were moving. In 10 minutes of time-lapse, those clouds were just rushing around, and it was almost like a kaleidoscopic effect of clouds going around. And I got to figure out another way to do better time-lapse. I can bring it in. I do have an app on the phone that's a specific app. It's called Lapsit, and those files can be transferred over. There, I'm speeding things up a little bit. You can do all of that in editing. Sometimes if you bring in a file that the editing programs won't recognize, you just can't use them. But once you've got the file in there, then you can do a lot. So I sped it up. You can see the clouds moving there, but on the time lapse, it was much, much faster because it just takes one shot every 10 seconds or so, one frame. It was almost too fast. But that all worked out well. We had to put a tagline up there and pull it back because it was leaning the wrong way, and then I managed the rope on the other side. We were afraid that big a piece of dead wood would just shatter when it slammed against the trunk. But we got away with it. Didn't make a big mess. But we did have to watch out for traffic. So when we made the cut, everybody had to look to see and hear if any cars were coming, and look very carefully for bicycles. The bicycles are the ones I have the hardest time with because they just show up out of nowhere, and oftentimes they run right through your cones. They don't slow down. They don't pay any attention. Those bike riders, they seem to be kind of oblivious to what's going on around them. They've got one thing on their mind, that's get where they're going, and they don't stop for anything. How many times have you seen a bicycle run a red light or fly right through a stop sign? They're supposed to obey the laws just like the cars do, but they don't. So anyway, we're getting near the end of the day. It's getting to be about 3:30 or so. We did pretty good. We did. We got all 3 trees almost entirely brushed out, and 2 of them down to about. One's down to about 15 feet, and the other one's about 20 feet. That's what we're going to start off with. So last shot I've got here is he was chucking his little wedges back over. There was wedges all over the place. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video, and stay tuned for what's coming up next. Thanks for watching.